Hello. In this video, you look at other party. You look at your notes, and in 8.1, bill of lading, in short, we will call it as a BL, and charter party, in short, we refer it to as CP. 8.0, the title is BL and CP in liner and tram shipping. We are not going to go through what is tram and liner shipping. By now, I will assume that all of you are aware what is the difference between liner and tram shipping. Now, let's look at 8.1. The term carrier. Usually, many people refer to carrier as ship owners. Yeah, under normal circumstances, it may be necessary, it may be correctly so, but it also depends on situation. And carrier probably refers to the person who enters into the contract of carriage of goods with the consignor. The contract of carriage of goods is none other than the charter party. Whether or not he is the owner or operator of the ship, or will thus include a charterer who sub-charters or enter into a bill of lading contract, right? So if you remember, I mentioned that bill of lading is actually not a contract, but although bill of lading contract is mentioned here, there will be a different interpretation of bill of lading contract. We shall be looking at that later. So carrier, the characterization of a carrier in maritime context, the water carrier, they can be divided into either a common or private carrier, involving the application of common law doctrine, which continues to be quite important today. Originally, the common law applied the term carrier mainly to the counterpart of the modern-day common carrier, while the term bailee was applied to the counterpart of the modern-day private carrier. All right, now we have a new term called bailee. The common law distinction was relevant with respect to the nature of the liability which might attach to the carrier for damage to cargo, with respect to burden of proof, and finally with respect to liability for refusal to carry a shipper's goods. For example, a common carrier was obliged to accept for carriage the goods of all corners or incur liability for damages due to his refusal. So no such obligation was placed upon a private carrier, but for common carrier, yes. All right, it sounds very complicated because those are the technicality when explaining common carrier. In a simple form, common carrier is normally associated with liner shipping, containerization, right? On container ship, you carry for many consignee or even consignor. All right, so if you look at paragraph 8.1.1 again, in context, it says a common carrier was obliged to accept for carriage the goods of all corners or incur liability for damages due to his refusal. That means in a containerization shipping, normally is open to carry for anyone who is interested. And if you have agreed to carry for those anyone, and if you refuse after that to carry for them, then you will be liable for damages claim. Just imagine you take a bus. A bus is usually a common carrier, isn't it? As long as you flag the bus, it will stop for you. The bus driver does not care what nationality you are, what race you are, how old are you, and so on. Right? So when you flag the bus, You go to the bus and then suddenly the bus driver say, I cannot fetch you, then the bus driver or the bus company may be liable for damages claim. Let's look at 8.1.2. It said at common law, all ship owners who contract to carry goods undertake absolute in the absence of express provision negativing such undertaking that their ship is seaworthy at the beginning of the voyage and they will proceed on the voyage with reasonable dispatch and without unnecessary deviation. So 8.1.2 is basically the common law undertaking of a ship owners, the three undertakings there which we will look at later. Now, how about private carrier? Private carrier in the simple form is your tram shipping, right? Tram shipping is like your oil tanker and your bulk carrier. That means they only carry for specific person. Imagine the taxi. When you take a taxi, the taxi only carries you or your friends, your family member who were at a material time together with you. So it's private carrier. You only go to the taxi with the people you know. All right. I don't think you want to take a taxi with someone you don't know, a stranger. All right. Although there may be some carpooling and so on, the carpooling situation is maybe construed as common carrier. So let's come back to shipping in private carrier is more so for tram shipping, like carriage of oil, bulk cargo, to that kind of nature. So a private carrier is under no obligation to accept any goods for carriage. But once he has done so, and usually is for reward, his obligations are regulated by the contract which governs the carriage, the charter party. All right. The contract may stipulate expressly the, the time, route, charges of the carriage and set out the carrier's responsibility as to the safety of the goods. So you see, private carrier is only for specific person. It can be for one person, it can be for a group of person, but if it is for a group of person, only one person will be involved in the contractual obligation. That means that one person will represent the rest. Right. Now, let's repeat on common carrier at 8.1.4 again. Again, a common carrier is one who is engaged in the trade of carrying goods as a regular business and who holds himself out as ready to carry for any who may wish to employ him, like the liner trade, right? Liner trade is continuous. For example, K-Line, they will have K-Line's cargo. Okay, of course, now K-Line has merged with NYK and MOL to form ONE, right? So let's continue. Whether it is necessary that he should fly regularly between fixed places seemed to be doubtful. Also, it is doubtful whether it is sufficient that he should habitually carry for the public, though for one only at a time, or whether he must on each occasion offer to take for all members of the public differently. So imagining bus, the MRT, like container ship. So common carrier, you will have a lot of people who want to carry cargo to put on their ship, right? Let's say you have 1,000 people or shipper who wants to carry the cargo, but you cannot have 1,000 people chartering one ship. Agree? That's why so common carriers situation is very different from private carrier. For private carrier, for one person on behalf of the rest will only be the contractual party with the ship owner to charter the ship. But container carrier, you may have more than 100 people who need the ship to carry their stuff, but you cannot expect all these 100 people or more than 100 people to sign the charter party with a container ship owner to charter that ship. So it's a different ball game altogether. Before we end, let's look at what is not a common carrier. It says where a person, while inviting all and sundry to employ him, reserved to himself the right to accept or reject offers of goods for carriage, it was held that he was not a common carrier. It is a question of fact whether a man is a common carrier or not. That means this person pick and choose, right? Pick and choose, then he is no longer a common carrier. In the commercial sense, you usually find that as well. For example, you may have heard of the container alliances or liner shipping alliances, a consortium, right? For example, those days we have APL, MOL, and Hyundai. They form an alliance, right? So they are common carrier, pertains to they will carry any cargo from APL, MOL, and Hyundai, right? But they are not a common carrier because they will not carry cargo belonging to NYK, for example. They will not carry cargo belonging to Yangming, for example, from Maersk, for example. All right. So it sounds very complex, but whatever it is, don't always jump into a conclusion. Find out more detail of the context of the situation or even for the business before you deem that whether this is a common carrier or a private carrier. So we will stop here and watch the next video.